Welcome into Orange Stories. My name is Seth Goldberg. Orange Stories presented by Diana Jewelers. And before we get to our guest, let's tell you that Diana Jewelers wants to help you tell your story with a beautiful new piece of jewelry or by utilizing a family or unused piece of jewelry in a new way. Just visit them today in Liverpool. We've got a great show for you coming up today. We were joined by former Syracuse guard Eric Devendorf. You know him as a passionate, fiery fan favorite on the court. But we got into why he started playing basketball, how he knew he was good, and how he ended up at Syracuse, in addition to some of his favorite moments from being here and wearing orange. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. This is Eric Devendorf on Orange Stories, presented by Diana Jewelers. All right, so welcome in. This is a series we're doing called Orange Stories. Really cool series. We're going to interview a whole bunch of people related to Syracuse University, athletes, coaches, broadcasters, media members, whoever it may be. And today we welcome in Eric Devendorf, a former guard for the program, a former member of the coaching staff. And Eric, I'm really looking forward to this. Thanks for stopping by.
Not a problem at all.
Let's start here. I want to go back before Syracuse, maybe even before high school. It depends on what your answer is. When did you realize you were better than people at basketball? Like, when did you realize you were good enough to go play in college, play professionally, whatever it might be?
Well, I guess I'll go back to probably when I was about 7. That's when I started playing and really took a hold of it. My dad introduced me to the game, and ever since then, I just remember being outside every single day, before school, after school. Probably around maybe 4th, 5th grade, I started noticing that I was, a lot better than all the kids, and I used to get teased because I always bring my basketball to school, so I go out and play at lunch after school. But now, who's laughing now? No, but it was probably around 10 or 11, and I just loved the game, so I continued to play. And I think as I got older, I started to learn about it a little bit more. But really, it was just pure a love for the game that got me to where I am now.
So you mentioned bringing your basketball everywhere. You were one of the kids who was like dribbling through the hallways and stuff to work on the handle? Well,
I mean, not in the hallways because I probably would have gotten in trouble for that. But I remember specifically I'd have, I think I was in 5th grade, I'd have assignments, and every assignment I'd write, I'd draw a basketball, and then I'd write basketball under it. And then my teacher started writing notes. She's like, "What does this mean? What does this mean?" And I was just like, well, I love basketball. So everything that I was doing, it was always with basketball. Like, I remember like little school dances we had. I wouldn't go unless I could, have something to do with basketball or have my basketball there with me. So I just love the game, and I think like nowadays that's what's really missing, like the pureness of it, just the love for the game. I think people, now are kind of doing it for the wrong things, whether it's for social media or whatever it is. But I truly like fell in love with the game at a young age, and that really helped me progress in my game because I wanted to work hard because I wanted to be in there and play.
Fast forwarding to high school and to the point where you're now being recruited by Syracuse, by presumably other schools. Mm-hmm. How did that process go? What was it like for you? And how ultimately do you end up here? How ultimately do you end up playing at Syracuse?
Well, it wasn't Syracuse wasn't my first choice. I was originally committed to Michigan State my sophomore year. So we'll go back to 8th grade. I was playing 8th grade, doing well, broke my wrist. So I think it was 5 games into the season, didn't play the whole season. That summer, got back, did well. 9th grade season, they put me on JV. First 4 games, I averaged like 48 on JV. So 5th game, I get moved up to varsity. First game on varsity, I remember I think I had like 14 points, but I hit the game-winning shot. And from then on, it just kind of took off. I remember. I'm from Bay City, so it's littler, and it's not a big basketball town, So I just remember during my games, they would be sold out, and every single game started getting a little bigger and a little bigger, and more people from everywhere, surrounding areas, started coming and watching, and that's really when it kind of started taking off with my career as far as recruiting and stuff like that. And I remember playing in the summers with AAU and going across the country and playing in all these, All-American camps. So, by my probably the summer going into my sophomore year, I was getting recruited by Michigan State, North Carolina, Louisville, in all the schools within that Midwest area in Michigan. So Like I guess like every great player in high school coming out of Michigan at that time, it was either Michigan or Michigan State, and so I committed to Michigan State at my sophomore year. But going into my summer of my junior year, I started getting, a lot of different interests from a lot of different schools. And I remember, I think it was 2003, I went to the game in the Breslin Center. It was Syracuse. It was Syracuse and versus Michigan State. It was the championship year.
Right.
And I remember seeing Mello and G-Mac and Hack, and I forget who else, and Billy Elins and all these other guys. And I'm like, man, I love how they play. I love how they get up and down, and I just love the pace of the game. That's how I played. I got up and down, and I liked fast pace, open court play. But so after that game, I remember going to my AAU coach, and I was like, you know what? I think I want to go to Syracuse. I think I want to see what Syracuse is about. And I was committed to Michigan State at the time, right? Tom Izzo, head coach. It's a premier program in the country, right?
They just won a championship too.
Right. With I think Mateen Cleaves and Jason Richardson. I don't know, 2000 maybe.
Yeah, 2000, 2001.
Yeah, right. So, I was 16 years old, and I had a big decision to make. I had to make a call to Coach Izzo and tell him that I think I was going to open up my recruitment and look at other schools. So I remember doing that, calling Coach Izzo, and I remember Coach Izzo saying. And I don't know if he's going to see this or not. He probably won't. But he's like, you know what? This is probably going to be one of the worst decisions you make in your life. And I'm like, thinking to myself, man, I'm 16. I got a lot more bad decisions to make in my life, besides decommitting from Michigan State. But I definitely remember him saying that. And after that, my AAU coach, he reached out to Troy Weaver and the coaches at Syracuse, and they flew down to Detroit at an AAU practice, and after practice, Coach Bam and Coach Weaver, they offered me a scholarship right there. So that's really how that happened. I took it right there, and ever since I've been an Orange.
Obviously, we'll get to the Syracuse half of this, but when you mentioned Tom Izzo, what were your interactions like with him other than that call? What was he like as going through a recruiting process?
Oh, awesome coach, awesome guy, like a real big time motivator. He's a high energy guy, a tough guy. Like he's built on toughness. That's how he built his program. So, my interactions with him were great because that's what type of player I was. I kind of had play with an edge and went out there and I showed it on the court. So he liked that in me, and so we were alike in that sense, right? So from that point he was great as far as that goes. But when I had to do that. Everything kind of changed up a little bit, right? I'm
sure. And so it's interesting. You mentioned you or your AAU coach reached out to Syracuse. That seems like a bit of an unorthodox way to end up at a school. Is that with what you know now? Is that kind of different than how most of these go, or it's totally hey, it happens?
I mean, it's totally different now. I mean, I know obviously it's similarities, but the game and everything outside of it, it's totally changed. But back then, I think, obviously the Syracuse coaches, they couldn't come to me when I was committed, So when I decommitted, I did it right away because I already knew what I wanted to, where I wanted to go and what did I want to do. So he reached out to them, and they were I think it was kind of like a surprise, like, oh, okay, well, I was a McDonald's All-American, so I think I was able to do that at the time, and they, they showed interest. So it was mutual. And once they came and watched me at practice, after that practice, that was it. They offered me a scholarship on the spot.
So fast forwarding to when you are here, when you're in Syracuse, when you're playing in the Dome, we talk about this so often with current teams, but that freshman needs that moment where they feel comfortable. When was your moment? When was your, for lack of a better term, your I made it moment here at Syracuse?
I don't know if it took time. I was such a cocky dude on that court. I was just like, you know what? I feel comfortable right away. I'm gonna go in there and as a freshman and do my thing and be comfortable. But I can't really think specific time. I just know being out there with GMAC, he made me super comfortable because we were alike, we were similar, both kind of on edge, white guys, white guards. Tough. It get to the bucket, get knocked down, get back up. So he made me super comfortable out there, and it was just like having myself in the backcourt. And, I think that's really what made me comfortable coming in was his presence.
And so you mentioned Jerry and the comfort factor there. That season that Jerry McNamara put together is obviously incredible, capped off by the Big East tournament, and we can get to that. But what is kind of if you had to tell one Jerry McNamara story from when you were playing with him, what's kind of your go-to story about Jerry as a teammate, as a guy that you were playing with?
Well, I'm gonna. I'm not going to tell everything because I can't tell.
Don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Yeah,
I
right.
get it.
I'm not going to tell all the stories. I'm going to tell the ones that are PG. No, but G-Mac, he was an awesome guy. I just remember specifically that Big East run my freshman year, and me after every game going into his room and just talking to him, and not even about basketball, just about regular stuff. Because he caught a lot of stuff. That year. Whether it's him being hurt, him not shooting as well. But for him to be able to just push through that whole year through injury, because he was hurt that whole year, he never played a game 100%. So for him to go and put that performance on in the Big East tournament, it was inspiring for me as a young guy coming into college basketball. And he, like I said, he really made me feel comfortable. And after every game in that tournament, I remember going into his room, and Matty Gorman was his roommate. So us three, we would just talk for a little bit, and those talks really helped me with my confidence and like I said, being comfortable on the court. But, just as a teammate in that environment, I think a lot of times coming into high major college basketball, especially as a young guy, it can be intimidating when you have older guys, especially who they've been through the process. They know how it works. And, G-Mac and Maddie and all those older guys on that team really made me feel comfortable and fit in. And I think that really helped my success, going forward in my career. In Syracuse.
What was it like? And I don't want to say getting an up close seat, because you were more involved than just having a seat. But what was it like getting an up close look and a view of that week? Because obviously the fans know the stories and certainly with hindsight know what Jerry was going through. But I'd imagine you knew a whole lot more in the moment of what he was going through, as you just kind of outlined. So what was it like watching that as, night in and night out, all of you are having to go and play the games night after night, but knowing what he was going through and the performances he was putting on? I mean, what was kind of going through your mind as that's happening, that you guys are putting together this incredible run?
You know what? During it, you really don't even have time to think about it. You're just focused on playing. It was back to back to back to back, right? So we didn't even have time to really rest. We go there, watch film after, wake up, watch film on the next game, and then get to it. So I just remember, as a young guy, as a freshman, being able to play in that atmosphere. Madison Square Garden. It's sold out orange. The pressure in the Big East tournament being on ESPN, I think who was Cincinnati, Georgetown, Pittsburgh, and who was third, UConn, Pittsburgh. Right. Yeah. So in top teams and playing on national television, what an experience in itself, and to do it with those group of guys, like I said, G-Mac, Matty G, D-Nick, Terrence, and all those other guys. So, a heck of an experience. And when you're in the moment, I don't think you're really thinking about it too much. But then when I get a chance, like now, to kind of sit back and look at those times, like, I'm pretty blessed to be able to, have done that and gone through those experiences and played in the Garden. I mean, that's the greatest place to play in the world, So being able to play there, seeing G-Mac and do what he did those 4 days was pretty incredible, man. Because like I said, the whole season he was kind of catching flack for whatever, not being consistent or whatever it is. So for him to kind of have that run was just like a punch in the mouth to all those critics, and he had it, and he did it his senior year, and it was incredible to see.
Was that your favorite stage, the Garden and the Big East tournament? No
question. It regardless of where I've ever played in the world, I've played all over the world, so many different arenas. It's nothing like going into the Garden and seeing those bright lights. It's like everything's dark, but the court is lit up. So that's the mecca of basketball. Every time I went in there, it was just like a whole nother energy went into me. You want to do good. You obviously just for yourself, but the Garden, it's a whole nother level. You can say that, oh, I had 20 in the Garden. Where Muhammad Ali fought. Michael Jackson had concerts, or Patrick Ewing, Michael Jordan, all those legendary moments. So to be able to kind of have your own moment in the Garden is super special. So it's nothing like it.
Since we're on the Garden, since we're on the Big East tournament, let's fast forward and go to that 6 overtime game and that week where you guys played another overtime game after that.
Right, West Virginia, yeah.
But let's start with that game against UConn. And obviously, it was not the game-winning shot, but the iconic image is you standing on the scorer's table.
Right.
I mean, that's just pure emotion, right? I mean, do you even remember how you end up on the scorer's table, or it just happened?
It wasn't a thought in my mind, just a reaction. The pure passion and love for the game and intensity. Like, I'm an emotional guy, and I wore it on my sleeve. People could see that. And, sometimes, could I have controlled it better? Absolutely. But I wouldn't have changed it because that's just how I am, as a person. If I really love something and I'm going to show it, I'm going to put it out there. I worked for it. I put all this time in there. So, I'm going to let it out, and that was just a pure, passion, love for the game moment. Didn't have any thoughts in my mind right when I went in. The first thing I turned and saw that, and, we're standing right up there. And again, in Madison Square Garden, to have that moment, at the time, didn't think twice about it. But now, like we're talking about it, sitting back, and I've had, several conversations with people about it. What an awesome thing to happen and moment to have happen in your life at the Garden. It's you sitting up against 15,000 people staring right down at you, and now that I can sit back and talk about it, it's awesome, man, and I wouldn't have changed it at all.
What's the thing you remember the most about that game and that night? Is it jumping on the table? Is it Johnny playing every minute of the game? Is it is there something that sticks out in your mind about that game?
I mean, so many things, and the one thing that really sticks out in my mind isn't even in the game. It was after the game. I just remember me and my roommate for 4 years. It was Arenze Anawaku. I just remember going to a diner, and it had to be, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were getting something to eat. And I just remember everyone at the diner standing up and clapping, and because obviously they watched the game. It was I think it was across the street from the Garden, but that's a moment I remember. We were exhausted. I remember they were going to get to eat. We got the standing ovation. So that was pretty cool. And then after that, we went back to the hotel and both did, we had to do ice baths. I remember the trainer, Brad, he got us ready for West Virginia the next day. And like you said, we went into overtime as well in that game. So, it's a lot of stuff that sticks out in my head, but I think the stuff that didn't happen in the game, after the game, just people talking about it, how exhausted we were. I mean, I remember we were laying in the room, me and AO, we're kind of like, dang, what? I can't believe this happened. And then it's an instant classic at 3 in the morning on ESPN. So, we didn't know how, big that moment was, how big that game was at the time. But I think after, everyone kind of, came back down, so to speak, we realized, like, man, we were a part of something pretty special.
Do you remember what the message was after that game, like in the locker room from Coach Boeheim? Do you remember like something that he said? Like, was there anything different that was said after that kind of a game?
Well, he didn't. He was too tired to curse anyone out, so he didn't do that. But I just remember, sitting there, and he was like, he had a big smile on his face, and he was like, "That's the greatest game I've ever been a part of." And I remember him saying that, and for him to say that, for a coach of that stature to say something like that, it's special. And, he really didn't have too much to say after that. He was just so proud of, how hard, the guys fought, because that's 2 games. You played 2 games, and we had guys foul out that, played significant minutes during the game. I think I fouled out, and AL fouled out, a couple other guys fouled out. So for all those guys, JT and Chris Joe as a freshman, to come in and help out. It was a team effort, and I think he was just super proud of, how everyone stuck together against a great UConn team too. A.J. Price to beat Jeff Adrian, Dyson, and all those guys. So it wasn't like it was a easy game. We stuck through it that whole time, and I think Coach was super proud of that.
You mentioned you played, you fouled out. You played over 60 minutes in that game,
right.
and AO played a ton of minutes, and the guys who did not foul out and end up playing, 50, 60, 70 minutes in that game as well.
Right.
You mentioned the ice baths and the trainer, Brad, working with you guys.
Yeah.
Just physically, like, how do you get through that? No, forget that game, like that week when you have that kind of a game in the middle, and, oh, by the way, you're coming back, 15 hours later to go play another game?
Against a great team in West Virginia. Deshaun Butler, they had Truck Bryant, so they had a great team, and Coach Huggins was the coach. So, they had a great program. We had to get ready and suit up again against a great West Virginia team. But Ryan Cabillas, who was the strength guy and still is a strength guy there right now, and then obviously Brad Pike, who's there as well. They made sure we were right. So it wasn't our bodies. Our bodies, obviously, you're going to be sore. But, we were preparing that through, summer and then preseason conditioning and then throughout the season. So we were ready physically. I think, if anything, it was more mentally, like, man, I got to get out here and give that 100% energy and effort again right after I just played 2 games in a row on one day. You know what I mean? So if anything, it was more mental. I just remember in the morning we'd get up and Ryan, he'd, put us through a little weight session and stretching so, our body would stay warm and things like that. But, physically, they did a great job. And they always do a great job up there with that. I think, if anything, it was mental and just kind of had to, psych ourselves and focus ourselves in to get ready for that next game against West Virginia.
The way you described that, playing 2 games in one day and then going back and playing a game the next day, it sounds almost like the AAU circuit now.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess in growing up AAU, it was like that for me as well. So when guys are like, man, it's a lie, because we've done it. We've all done it. We've played 4 games in one day when we were, 13, 14 years old and still ready to have the energy to go play another 2, So obviously, as you get older, your body's going to, react differently. But like I said, physically, we could do it. We could have played, 6, 7, 8 overtimes. That's how our body was, and we were in shape. Like I said, it was more mental than anything.
Couple more on Syracuse before I want to get to a few other things before we wrap up. And so I'll go here. What's your favorite Jim Boeheim story or moment from your years playing with him, for him?
Oh, my favorite. Well, I guess I have a lot, but I'd have to probably take some more time to think about them. But the one that comes to mind is my freshman year in the Big East tournament with GMAC, and I just remember I was in the room with GMAC and we were watching the presser over again with him and Coach Boeheim sitting there, and I just remember him saying, we wouldn't have won 10 effing games without this kid right here. You hear me? 10 effing games, but he said, obviously right. we could hear him say it because they didn't have I don't think they had the censor at the time because they weren't expecting him to, say the F-bomb, but I just remember seeing GMAC's face and he was grinning from ear to ear. And that's what you want from your coach, man, that type of support. And I think right then, for me being a freshman, a young guy, seeing that support from your coach for your leader, it made me more confident, going forward with my career because I know my coach was going to have my back. And obviously I've been through some ups and downs in my career, and coach was stuck with me the whole time. So it says a lot about coach.
And what about Mike Hopkins, a guy who, you worked closely with when you were playing, and, when you came back on staff, you worked with him a little bit too? I
still talk to Hop this day. I talk to Hop around Thanksgiving. I know he's a super busy guy. If anyone knows Hop, knows how he's on the go. You might talk to him today, but not hear from him in 2 months. So, but that's just Hop. He's an awesome guy. He was one of the guys in my career where I could go to him on or off the floor. And a lot of times it was more so off the floor things. Like he's a big. He's a guy who's really into like meditation and spiritual stuff. So he kind of helped me with that and going through my career in the mental part of my game, because so much of the game now is more mental. Like all these kids are talented and can do the skill stuff on the court, but can you think it? Can you have that mental IQ to be able to progress as a player? And Hop was really one of the first guys who really made me think about it like that. And till this day, I'm able to bounce stuff off him and get really good information from him.
When people think of you, I know they've heard stories about you being a good teammate. And so I kind of want to turn the tables and say who, for you, was one of those guys who stands out. I know you mentioned AO, as a roommate, or Jerry and Matt Gorman as kind of those leaders your freshman year. But who's the guy that kind of stands out as one of those best teammates to you?
Well, I've had so many, great teammates. I don't want to leave anyone out. You know what I mean? And I still talk to a lot of these guys. But I'd say probably one of my best teammates, I'd say GMAC. My freshman year, like I said, he really made me feel comfortable. He brought me in, he put me under his wing. And, for a freshman for a senior to do that for a freshman, and obviously that senior has had a unbelievable career, a national championship, scored many points, assists, all that. So for him to kind of put me under his wing, it made me feel really good. And till this day, we talk, and he really helped me progress in my career at Syracuse and beyond, because I kept all those things that he taught me and shared with me, off the court, with me. And like I said, that helped me excel.
I want to bounce around to some of your post-Syracuse things now, and I'll start here. You played in the D League when you came out of school, and the G League now is a very different place than when you were playing in it.
Totally different.
What was it like when you were playing there, and kind of how do you see it change to where it is now?
So when I was there, it's super cutthroat, right? I mean, grown men just trying to get to the NBA, get a job. There's no team involvement, nothing like that. It was just guys going out there trying to get buckets. I mean, were guys talented? Yeah, absolutely. But it was about everybody was trying to get a call up, and that wasn't really the case. Everyone's not going to get a call up, right? The NBA kind of had their guys in mind, but a good experience for me. I was fortunate to get on my second time around to get on a pretty good team with Reno and a pretty good coach. Where he gave me opportunity to play, and I feel that I did pretty well. But other than that, it's a cutthroat league, man. I think now more so, they're doing a great job of getting sponsorships and businesses behind it, which is helping it grow. And you see, they're getting more money. I think it's like $7,000 a month now, $35,000 salary. So they've done a great job of growing it, and I think they need to, kind of almost treat it how baseball does it with the farm league systems. They got to start paying guys more, because they'll go overseas. Why not keep the talent over here, right? Keep the talent over here and make that G League the second best league in the world. Because right now the second best league in the world is the Euro League. And guys can go over there and get $500,000 to $1 million to $2 million. So you want to keep your best players here. So I think if the G League can kind of try to find a system just like that baseball, I think they'll be in even better shape.
One of the other interesting leagues that you played in, at least more recently, it's become even more interesting, is the league down in Australia and New Zealand.
Unbelievable league.
First off, what was your experience playing there? What was it like playing basketball in New Zealand and Australia?
Oh, it was unbelievable. Those two places are my favorite places in the world. I'd live there right now. I could pack up my stuff and put, and I'll be there. But right now, the league has definitely evolved to where it's, one of the top leagues in the world. When I was there, it was on that, path upward. So, a great experience. I met a lot of great people out there. Besides the basketball, the living was unbelievable. Got to experience Australia as a country, and New Zealand as a country. And like I said, two of my favorite places to be. So, super grateful for that. And hopefully I can make my way out there soon.
You obviously went the college path and then went and played overseas, but we're seeing some kids now forego college, and the league down in Australia and New Zealand is one of those leagues. How do you what do you make of that? What do you make of kids going and I mean, they're kids, they're 18, 19 years old and trying to make it in that league rather than go to, a Kentucky or a Kansas or a Syracuse?
Well, first off, I think the NBL in Australia has done an awesome job of, I think they call it the Rising Star. They've done an awesome job of promoting that and bringing guys over there, which is only helping their league get better. And I think for the kids over here, it's, every situation is different, right? It depends who that kid has around him, who's in that circle, who's guiding him in the right direction. And RJ Hampton, LaMelo Ball, I think those two guys made the right decision to go over there, because now they're considered, both top 5 draft picks going to next NBA draft, right? So, it worked out for them. But Joe Schmo or whoever, this guy, it might not work out for them. Everybody's different. But I think for the top elite guys in high school, if you have the opportunity to do that, and then let's not forget this, they're both making 150 plus, a year. So, better than most people over here with a regular job, right? So it's not a bad decision overall for this year either. And then next year they're going to be multimillionaires. So for those top guys, it works for them. It might not work for everybody. If you're I don't know, if a top 100 player and you want to do that instead of going to college, it might not be the best decision for you. So everybody's situation is different. And I think if it works for you, then, you got to do it.
Before we go, I've got to ask you about Boeheim's Army. And
Yeah.
we finally saw Boeheim's Army games in Syracuse, and it was a lot of fun. You've kind of been with them, it seems like right from the jump, and kind of one of those founding players of the team. How did that come about? And how is it that you come in each summer having not played, in a professional league, and you go up against people who are still playing basketball professionally full time and still play the way that you do? I mean, you're consistently like one of the best players on the court in those games.
Yeah, well, I remember Kevin Belby reaching out to me a while ago about it. So I heard about it before when I was overseas. My friend Torrey Jackson, actually, his team, Notre Dame alumni, won it the first year. The first year they ever did it, and that's where I initially heard about it. But then Kevin Belby reached out to me about getting a team together, so it was kind of a no-brainer. I was still playing overseas. I think I was in New Zealand, so it was my last time playing. But yeah, so he got me involved, and then once I got a taste of that first year, it was kind of like, man, this is awesome. They do a super good job with it being on TV, and the crowd engagement and all that. It's awesome, man. And for me, I just love to play. I always go back to that, and I still play ball. It's not like I play professionally or in leagues like that, but I'll still do open gyms or go get shots and stuff like that. It's kind of like a stress reliever for me, right? And then when I'm out there playing, I don't hold anything back, right? It's just I'm going at you regardless if I've haven't played in a year or I play every day. So I think that's what kind of helps me. I always go out there with the same mindset, and I always tell younger kids coming up now, the thing that really separates you is your mindset. Everyone's going to be pretty good, but what are those little details that can separate you? And for me, it was my mindset. I go out there every time I'm playing and go as hard as I can.
Last thing, you were on the staff here at Syracuse for a little bit, on the staff at Detroit Mercy for a little bit. Mm-hmm. What's next for you? Do you still want to be in coaching? How do you see that all shaping up?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to stay in basketball, whether it be, coaching on that level, NBA, or doing what I'm doing right now, which is, just working with local high schools and local kids and getting groups and individual work around here, and just trying to help these kids, excuse me, learn the game,
Yeah, it's been great to watch. It's been fun to watch, and hey, we've enjoyed having you around for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be here, man. I'm not going anywhere.
Eric, thanks so much for coming in. Had a blast. Really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, that's Eric Devendorf. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Orange Stories. You can check these out anytime you want, whenever you want, wherever you want on our Twitch channel, Cuse Sports Talk. So check it out and be back soon for some more Orange Stories here on twitch.tv/Cuse Sports Talk. Thanks to Eric Devendorf for joining us here on Orange Stories, presented by Diana Jewelers. Tell your story with a new piece of beautiful jewelry or by utilizing a family or unused piece of jewelry in a new way. Visit Diana Jewelers today in Liverpool. Don't forget, if you missed any part of our conversation with Eric or any part of any episode that we've done of Orange Stories, you can find them anytime, anywhere here on Cuse Sports Talk. Just check us out at twitch.tv/Cuse Sports Talk or on the Twitch app. Thanks for joining us today on Orange Stories, presented by Diana Jewelers. We'll talk to you again very soon here on Cuse Sports Talk.